70 meters away. So just a little under 10 meters to go. And the crew is going to be sending a command once more to Dragon. They're going to command it to hold, so it'll camp out there at 180 meters. And then right now, in the meantime, the teams in Houston and in Hawthorne are getting ready to do a go, no go for the actual approach into waypoint number 2, which will bring Dragon even closer.
Copy.
And McLean sending the hold command.
Houston, the vehicle mode is hold.
Copy, hold.
Range 181.
And you just heard it. Dragon is currently holding out at the command hold point at 180 meters away from the space station, hanging out, waiting for the command to approach.
Transition to the lab and monitor hold per block Charlie, line 3 and 1.102 Dragon approach and retreat monitoring. Also at this time, we need the lab forward hatch closed, and you will need to bring up space to ground 1 on the in the lab ATUs.
And the station copies, transition in process.
And with that hold being successful, it looks like we are about 15 minutes ahead on the timeline still. So we were expecting that initial contact and capture to be at about 3 a.m. Pacific. So now could be 2:45 a.m. Pacific. We'll keep an eye on the timeline and everything, but moving very smoothly through all of the operations today. If you're just now joining us, Crew Dragon right there, only 180 meters away from the International Space Station, getting a great zoom in now, and pretty soon it's going to be zooming itself towards the International Space Station. It's been a smooth day so far. We started a couple of kilometers away, moved into waypoint 0 inside of the approach ellipsoid. At that point it was only 400 meters away from the space station. Then it flew up and around into the front portion of the station, looking right down the barrel of the docking adapter where it now sits. We went past waypoint 1, which is 150 meters away. We had a successful retreat demonstration with the crew sending the command. It retreated out to 180 meters where it now sits, thanks to a successful hold command and demonstration from the crew.
As Dan said, we were expecting a contact at about 3 o'clock a.m. Pacific time. Excuse me. We will have sunlight until about 2:45 a.m. Pacific time. So if we are 15 minutes ahead of schedule, we may even get some great sunlight views of the Dragon within waypoint 2, which again, 20 meters away from the space station, we'll be able to see all the features of that SpaceX docking system.
And so for right now, Dragon's just going to continue holding at about 180 meters away from the station. Again, the team's now looking at all the data, how Dragon's systems have been performing so far, and once everybody's comfortable and they do one more go, no-go poll, Dragon's going to resume its approach, and it's going to fly into waypoint 2, and at that point, it's only going to be 20 meters away from station.
And we copy.
For those of you just joining us, we are watching a live view from the International Space Station looking towards the Dragon spacecraft, currently holding at only 180 meters away.
Station Houston
and station for step 6. All video and overlays look nominal. Prop age is less than 1. All status fields are showing expected status.
And we copy.
What you're seeing on your screen right now is what the overlay that the astronauts in the ISS are seeing. This is actually from the centerline camera on board the Dragon, and you're seeing the docking system overlay. That if you were on the International Space Station looking at that laptop, you'd be able to see the Dragon approaching and getting closer and closer to the International Docking Adapter.
To resume the approach.
And we copy.
So NASA astronaut Anne McClain radioing they're ready on board the International Space Station for Dragon to resume its approach. So now the teams down here on the ground will kind of check the final boxes, do the go, no-go poll amongst everybody out at the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Houston. And the teams here in Hawthorne, and the Dragon will be able to resume its approach. So again, we're just 180 meters away right now. Eventually going to be flying in shortly to a spot just 20 meters away from station. But with that hold demonstration now complete, that actually just means there's one more demo planned for this flight. So far, Dragon obviously conducted a successful launch yesterday to bring it into its initial orbit, and then the Dragon spacecraft has conducted a series of demonstrations on its way to the space station. And that included checking out the GPS unit multiple times, 2 different times, both checking its own GPS coordinates against ground models down on Earth, and also checking them against the GPS on board the International Space Station. Just about 2 hours after the launch, it did a demo of its Draco thrusters using 2 thrusters on the front of Dragon just to do 2 burns to simulate abort capability. And then it's done all of these demonstrations so far. The crew initially turning on a blinking light just to make sure they could command the vehicle, and then just executing this retreat and hold demonstration. There's one more that's going to be called the controllability, where they're actually going to set the speed of the vehicle just to mimic docking, just for a short period of time as they go back past waypoint number 1, which is 150 miles away, or meters away. Meanwhile, the team's right now conducting that final go, no-go poll at the hold point, at which point they're going to get ready to resume the approach, move past waypoint 1 down to waypoint 2, and only be 20 meters away.
You just heard that sounds like Dragon. Oh, still waiting. So we are hearing that Dragon has been cleared to do the approach towards waypoint 2. That is again only 20 meters away from the International Docking Adapter.
Station Houston on 1, Dragon is resuming approach to waypoint 2. Monitor per step 7 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitor.
Dragon is currently resuming its approach towards waypoint 2. Again, after that commanded retreat, it went back out to 180, maybe 170, 180 meters away, was commanded to hold, and it has just been given the go-ahead to re-approach back to waypoint 2.
That's right. The teams here in Hawthorne giving the command to Dragon, so it's once more on that approach. And again, everything's going to be really slow on this approach, closing in at a rate of just about 1/10 of a meter per second or so. They are going to slow down speeds to just about the docking speeds once they pass waypoint 1 in one final demonstration. but we are on the way now towards waypoint 2, so Dragon's going to start closing in.
In station range 164.
See a little bit more clearly now. That's the nose cone of Dragon that's currently open. Again, hinged and opened up on the sort of top side of Dragon from this view right here from the International Space Station.
And you'll hear Anne McClain, the NASA astronaut on board, radioing down on the space grounds as she and David St. Jacques have been monitoring and commanding the vehicle throughout all the operations today. Dragon, once it gets to waypoint 2, it's going to stop. The teams in the meanwhile are going to be conducting a go, no-go for docking. So that's the final go, no-go poll that we'll do today, and that's the one that's going to get us really excited, because then it's time for Dragon to actually dock to the space station. Dragon's going to make that initial soft contact using the adapter soft capture ring, which is then going to retract to bring Dragon in for the hard capture sequence. And that's where a series of hooks will actually close in to really tightly secure Dragon to that international docking adapter. As a further precaution, Dragon's soft capture system has a set of rotary spring dampeners just to lessen the force of that contact between the spacecraft and the International Space Station. One interesting note, though, unlike Soyuz dockings, where the Soyuz spacecraft and the space station go into free drift, so all the thrusters, all the attitude goes off just to lessen any of that force between the spacecraft's docking mechanisms. It's not going to happen for Dragon. Both it and the International Docking Adapter are robust enough that the station's going to remain in attitude control. That's a much at least that's a preferred means of controlling the station, obviously, for the flight control teams, just so they can continue to keep the station in its right attitude. So that will be a notable departure from what we see for Soyuz dockings for this one.
That is right. NASA developed along with the International Docking Adapter, they had developed the International Docking System Specification, which is then used by SpaceX and other visiting vehicles to develop their docking systems on board the spacecraft. SpaceX has developed the SpaceX docking system, which is a little bit different than other types of docking systems. It actually uses those passive springs that Dan was just mentioning. The soft capture ring, we actually might be able to see it very soon as Dragon gets closer and closer, is a ring about maybe 2 or 3 feet wide. It's about the same diameter as the hatch, and it has 3 pedals positioned at about 120 degrees apart from each other. The International Docking Adapter also has these pedals. It's what we call an androgynous docking system, so the pedals can interleave together as we get closer and closer to contact. That contact will be sensed as soon as the soft capture ring gets close enough to actually latch into the opposing pedals of the International Docking Adapter. There are buttons all around the inside of those soft capture ring pedals, and as soon as they're compressed, that's when we'll know. We'll have a signal from our telemetry saying that contact has been made, and at that point the latching pawls on all those pedals will have engaged, and Dragon will be caught by the docking adapter. That is just what we call soft capture. It's actually not the full docking mechanism. So soft capture just means that soft docking ring has made contact with the station. The soft capture ring has 6 arms in a hexapod configuration attached to those springs. Once the springs have dampened out any additional maneuvers between the station and the Dragon, it'll then retract, bringing the Dragon closer and closer to the station in for hard capture. That's when we have 12 docking hooks, hard capture hooks, that will activate from the Dragon side and grab onto hooks on the International Docking Adapter side. And when that happens, that's when hard capture has occurred. Yeah, this will all make a little bit more sense when we can get a better view of the docking adapter on the Dragon as it gets a little bit closer. Right now we are approaching towards waypoint 2.
And we are just a couple of minutes away. We just heard Anne McClain radio down that we're inside of 100 meters.
Copy all.
There we go, getting a good call again from Anne McClain on the space grounds. Everything looking good so far with Dragon's approach. We're about 80 meters or so away from the station, so only about 60 meters to go until we're going to get to that final waypoint for this evening, morning, whatever time of day it is today. and then it's going to hold at 20 meters. And right now the teams are going around doing their final go, no go for docking. So after we get to that final hold point at waypoint 2, it'll be time to move in and use that docking adapter for the very first time.
And we here at SpaceX are so excited to see these systems. They've been tested hundreds of times in conjunction with NASA. There's actually a docking system simulator that we've used to make sure that these mechanisms will work ahead of time, and everything looks really good so far. We're just so excited to see these things happening in space for the first time.
I'm getting the views back from the cameras on Dragon itself. Again, you can see that docking adapter coming into view. It's not going to be directly in the center line, as this is actually a separate camera. The center line camera being fed to the crew members on board the International Space Station. That's why it might look a little off center from the heads-up display that you can see on the screen when we have it up. But everything looking good. Again, on board the station, 2 astronauts, Canadian David St. Jacques and NASA astronaut Anne McLean, inside monitoring the vehicle. You'll hear them refer to the RPOP, which is the Rendezvous Proximity Operations Program. That's just the name of the program that they're using on a laptop inside of the station to actually monitor Dragon. And as they just demonstrated a little while ago, the crew has the ability to send commands to make Dragon hold or retreat or even abort if they see anything that looks a little out of sorts with its approach. But everything going real smoothly so far. We should be just about 2 minutes away.
In the corridor, orientation as expected.
Copy all.
All right, another good call down. We're about 50 meters away so far, so only 30 meters to go, and then we're at waypoint 2.
Once we're given the go-ahead to approach from waypoint 2, the next big calls we're going to be looking out for are that soft capture contact and then hard capture. You can start to see the space station in great detail here. Again, this is from a view of the forward media cam at the top of the Dragon 2 module. Just to reiterate, this camera is not directly on the center line of the docking axis. This is a fantastic view of Dragon in the sunlight from the International Space Station. So normally when we're getting views from the Dragon for this webcast, you're going to be seeing a camera that's not quite on the center line, so it's a little bit off, and it may not look like we're heading directly towards the docking adapter, but if we're lucky enough, we might get some views from the centerline camera in the very center of the hatch from the space station, and you can see us kind of headed on right in. But right now, this is an unbelievable view from the space station. You can see Dragon 2 in full light with its nose cone open, its soft capture ring deployed. You can actually start to see those 3 pedals that I was talking about earlier on that ring, 120 degrees apart. That ring is extended above the hatch by 6 hexapod arms that are all attached to Dragon by springs. So that will be the first part of Dragon to make contact with the ISS. And when it does, those springs will compress and absorb and dampen any of the relative velocity differences between the space station and Dragon. This soft capture system was actually subjected to extensive testing and the 6 degree of freedom dynamic test system at NASA Johnson, and this was actually the very same system they used to test other docking systems at NASA.
And we're hearing that Dragon is now at waypoint 2, about 20 meters away from station. So again,
Station
Dragon's
Houston
just
in
going to
1,
hold
20
here.
meter hold confirm. Perform step 8 in 1.102, Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station for step 8, we can confirm
really hard to
vehicle
believe that we're
mode
looking
is hold. Minimum range observed was 19.75. Orientation is expected. Vehicle is in the corridor and holding at 20. Performing review.
Right now you're seeing
And
a view
copy all.
from that
Thank you.
centerline camera. This is rebroadcast from the International Space Station. So this is what the astronauts on the station are seeing. It looks like it's aligned right and ready to dock. It's what I was saying before. It's sort of unbelievable. This is the same spacecraft that we saw yesterday on top of the Falcon 9 at Kennedy Space Center. Now it's in space just 20 meters away from the International Space Station.
Yeah, and it's all coming to this. It's all coming to that go for docking, which we're going to stand by again. The teams are now going to be doing kind of their final go no go poll, and then they're going to get the call and we're going to hear it, and it's going to be Dragon is go for docking. So just 20 meters away, successful hold. I didn't comment earlier, but we did hear that there was a good controllability demo. Again, that was just a demo, just slowing Dragon down to basically mimic the final speeds that it'll be at for docking, and that was also done successfully. So we're going to stand by, continue to get this great view of Dragon, and wait for that final go for docking. Alright, and right now we're just continuing to hold Dragon still just 20 meters away from the space station. And all the teams now just taking a final look at the data. Dragon's moved through all the demos so far without any issues, not tracking any on the spacecraft, and continuing to get some good views as we do have that signal with the International Space Station. So holding at 20, and then we're going to be listening for the final go no go for docking. Then it'll be time for Dragon to close in.
This is currently a beautiful view of Dragon 2 in full sunlight. Many of us at SpaceX have waited years for this view, approaching the International Space Station. Just a quick note about the features you can see on the Dragon 2 from this view. Obviously the big structure at the top is the nose cone in its retracted position. It rotates away from its stowed position for launch and back towards where it is right now for docking and orbital operations. You can also see that soft capture ring. Right now, it's deployed and out in front of the hatch. A bit tough to see the distance between the soft capture ring and the hatch, but it's standing off just a little bit and ready to make contact with the international docking adapter.
And station crew is ready for docking.
Those 4 Draco thrusters around the hatch.
And we copy.
And we just heard Ann McLean report the crew is ready
and
for
Ann,
docking.
we're currently assessing lighting.
That call back from the Capcom in Houston, Leslie Ringo, just the teams looking at the lighting. As Tom mentioned a little while ago, the sun is expected to set in about 12 minutes on the station and Dragon, so they'll be heading into an orbital nighttime. So I think they just want to make sure they have all the right conditions for the final approach and docking of this spacecraft. Again, the crew's going to be monitoring, and they're using that centerline camera now to monitor primarily from that 20-meter point all the way in. They're going to continue to be in the loop all the way up until just 2 meters away, and then we might hear a call out over the space to grounds CHOP, which stands for crew hands-off point. That just means everything at that point is in the hands of Dragon and the space station, including abort commands.
One important thing to remember here, and this sort of just blows my mind every time I stop and think about it, is Dragon looks like it's perfectly still with respect to the space station, and it is, but both the space station and Dragon are moving at 17,500 miles per hour in orbit around the Earth. The orbital mechanics and math required to line these two spacecraft up together is just sort of mind-boggling, and it's always impressive to see it happen in real time like this.
And Station Houston on 1, while we're holding here, please command the docking light to on, O-N.
Copy, commanding docking light on.
And so the crew's going to command the
Docking
docking light on
LED
Dragon.
Can we copy?
There we hear confirmation that the command's been sent. Again, this is what the astronauts on board are looking at right now. This is that centerline camera that they're using to watch as Dragon makes that final approach. The team's all looking at systems, and they're also looking at the communication coverage between here and the International Space Station. They do want to make sure we have a good signal for that final approach and docking, so we might be standing by for a couple of minutes. Dragon able to dock in daytime or nighttime, that is not going to matter for today's operations, but they are going to be looking to make sure we have a strong signal, and we might have a short dropout coming up in just a couple of minutes. So we're going to stand by. Dragon's continuing to hold at just 20 meters away.
You mentioned that docking light being turned on. This is special for me, even in particular, having worked on both the communication system between the Dragon and the space station, and also on that centerline camera module, which has the LED that they were talking about. I spent months at SpaceX with a unit of that on my desk, testing that LED, and to see it happening in space is truly extraordinary.
I was going to ask. So Tom basically built the spacecraft. What is it like to see it sitting there? It looks unreal.
For me and everyone else at SpaceX that has poured their life force into this vehicle for the past how many years, it's unbelievable to see this thing flying for real. Like I said before, it's kind of wild to see this just 24, 27 hours ago on top of a Falcon 9, and now in space. It's sort of just a dream come true, is what I'd say.
And you can see the shadows starting to creep along Dragon. Again, we are going to be heading into that orbital nighttime shortly, as both Dragon and the International Space Station flying over the Indian Ocean right now. They're actually a couple hundred miles south of Australia, right between Australia and Antarctica. And pretty soon they're going to be crossing the Terminator line. That's the line separating night from day on the Earth's surface. And so things are going to get a little bit darker, but that's why we heard the crew get the call to turn the docking light on.
Sunset so that we have a good view of the backplate.
Copies.
And you just heard that call up to the station. So they are going to wait until sunset, until they resume that final approach, and then sunset is scheduled to come in just about 7 minutes from now at 45 after the hour. So we're going to stand by, continue to get these views of Dragons. We're going to lose signal for a couple of minutes shortly, and then that's going to lock back up right as the sun's going down, and then we'll be ready to move Dragon in from that 20-meter hold point to the docking. We're almost at docking.
There. So don't go anywhere. We're going to hold for just a few minutes. Sunset is expected at 2:45 a.m. Pacific time. So as soon as that happens, we'll be able to continue with the docking. Stand by.
Station Houston on 1, stand by as Dragon is about to resume approach.
Station copies.
And we just heard the call up to the International Space Station Crew Dragon is go for approach. You can hardly see the thrusters firing, so it's leaving that waypoint number 2 where it's been sitting at 20 meters away. Now it's time for the final docking.
At 20 meters, Dragon was just spitting distance away from that international docking adapter. Now it is closing those 20 meters in preparation for soft capture. So right now it is orbital nighttime, so the light you're seeing is both light from the International Space Station pointed at Dragon, and then the docking light, which is the bright spot in the center of Dragon's hatch, you can see right now. Right now, Dragon's flight computer is using those Draco thrusters, as you can see them firing on your screen to
Station Houston on 1, Dragon is resuming approach and is go for docking. Monitor per steps 9 and 10 in 1.102. Dragon approach and retreat monitoring.
Station copies. Vehicle mode is approach to docking port. Primary range is decreasing. Vehicle is centered.
Copy all.
And getting good reports from Ann McLean there on board the International Space Station. Dragon is approaching, everything in on the center, and still looking good. So the crew is using that centerline camera on the Dragon spacecraft just to do all of their final monitoring of the vehicle. This camera a little off center. This is not the one the crew's using, but this is one that we have. But you can see now that international docking adapter. It's attached to a larger black piece of the station that's a pressurized mating adapter, which is then attached to actually one of the modules, which is known as Node 2 in the Harmony. It's the Harmony module. So Dragon continuing to close in. It's expected to take just about 5 minutes or so, and there's a great side-by-side look. One view on your left from Dragon, one view on your right from the International Space Station.
On the view on the left from Dragon looking at the space station, we can finally see those details of the international docking adapter. The IDA is a passive system, and the Dragon contains all the active components of that docking system. You can actually see those androgynous petals, those 3 petals that are kind of sticking at 120 degrees apart from each other on the IDA on the left-hand side. In the very middle is actually a visual docking target that the astronauts can use to judge whether or not the Dragon is right on course. It has a little stick that comes off from the center of it, so you can see the stick's shadow and determine whether or not you're directly on center in all 3 axes. Like Dan said, this camera view on the left from Dragon is not the centerline camera, it's actually the forward media cam.
Range is 9.5 and decreasing. Vehicle is centered. Largest excursion observed is less than half a meter. Less than half a degree.
Copy.
All right, we're inside 10 meters. Halfway there.
Like I was saying, this camera view right here is just a little bit off center from the center line, so it may look like we're not approaching that IDA directly head on, just because the camera's not in the right position, but the crew has that center line camera, which is directly dead on, and as long as we keep hearing these good callouts, it sounds like Dragon is dead right where it needs to be. And there it is, there's that centerline camera view that the crew on the International Space Station is using. They use the overlays to figure out, and that visual docking guide right there to make sure the Dragon is exactly where it needs to be as it approaches. On the right hand side, you can start to see the mechanisms of the SpaceX docking system aboard the Dragon. The very first part of Dragon that will make contact with the ISS is that soft capture ring. You can see it's extended forward from the hatch of the Dragon right now. As soon as those pedals make contact, latching pawls will engage and hold the pedals against the opposite ones on the IDA, and contact pins will depress, and we should hear the call out for soft capture achieved.
Crew hands off point.
Copy.
All right, so we're at that crew hands-off point. That means we're about 2 meters away. Crew no longer sending commands. Dragon doing everything on its own.
Soft capture confirmed.
Mission compares.
You can hear the cheers behind us at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We have confirmation of a soft capture of the Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station. You can see in your view the Dragon still moving around a little bit. That's the soft capture ring is attached to Dragon by way of 6 arms that are all attached to springs that help dampen the motion, the difference in the relative velocities between the Dragon and the space station. This is unbelievable news for everyone here at SpaceX and at NASA.
Yeah, that capture, that docking coming at 2:51 a.m. Pacific, 5:51 a.m. over on the East Coast, as the International Space Station and Dragon were flying just about 260 statute miles over planet Earth, just north of New Zealand. So
Ring
Dragon
reflection in
now
progress.
docked. Well,
Now, we're not quite there yet.
not quite there yet.
We've achieved soft capture, which is what the call you heard. So the next step is going to be hard capture. Hard capture is achieved via 12 latching hooks that are all around the inside of the Dragon hatch, and they'll actuate and grab onto hooks on the other side and pull and hold the Dragon tight against the ISS.
That's right. This whole process expected to take about 15 minutes. So first that soft capture ring is going to retract, and then the hard capture sequence can begin its process. That'll take about 12 minutes. And then there are 2 umbilicals that will actually get mated to the Dragon spacecraft from the station, and that is to provide power and data to the spacecraft and transfer that over to the station. And at that point, it will be fully attached and ready to stay for the next 5 days. So again, that capture coming at 2:51 a.m. Pacific time, 5:51 a.m. over on the East Coast, as the Dragon and station were flying just north of New Zealand. So there we go.
And you can imagine
Successful.
this. Yeah, I mean, this is unbelievable for everyone here that's worked so hard on Dragon and with NASA. You can imagine that soft capture retraction, sort of like Dragon doing a pull-up and bringing itself closer to the station to get those hard capture hooks ready to go. Like I said, this is going to take just a few minutes, so the whole process takes about 15 minutes to get the soft capture ring retracted, the hard capture hooks engaged, and then those umbilicals mated. So we still got a little bit more ways to go here. Dragon is attached, and we're all very excited about that, but lots more to come.
Yeah, we're gonna hang out until that hard capture and everything is complete, and then after that, the action's not over. Then it's on to hatch opening. So it'll take about 2 hours after all of this is complete for the hatches to be open. At least that's what we're tracking on the timeline right now. In that space of time, they have to pressurize what's known as the vestibule. So that's actually the area of both Dragon and the space station that are normally exposed to the vacuum of space. That is now going to form a tight seal, and so they have to pressurize that. The crew will actually open up a seal manually and insert air from the station into that vestibule, and then they have to do a series of leak checks, obviously just to make sure that everything is good before they move to opening the hatches. And there's a hatch on the pressurized mating adapter side, and there's also a hatch on the Dragon itself. And so that'll be coming up a little bit later, and then we'll actually see crew members go inside of Crew Dragon in space for the very first time.
They can meet Ripley as soon as they get inside there.
That's right. And there is one passenger already on board the Dragon spacecraft now, attached to the International Space Station.
2 if you count the zero-G indicator.
That's right.
That's the flying along with Ripley there. So for those of you just joining us, we did have a successful soft capture. Like we've been saying, it's going to take just a little bit longer with a lot more action coming up. So stay with us as we head towards eventual hard capture and then hatch opening.